Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, no fancy DVD, Blu-ray updates. I thought maybe we could go back for sure to do more, more reviews of movies that which I just wanted to talk about. So, without further ado, let's go head out to the DVD shelves and see what we can basically pick it up for what we can review. So, I'll see you there. Well, welcome to my DVD collection and along with my half Blu-ray collection. So let's pick out what we're gonna review this time around. What can we review this time around? How about Day After Tomorrow? And Dragon Wars, D Wars. Let's talk about Day After Tomorrow and Dragon Wars, D Wars. Today, I am Prince Montemy Reviews. Welcome back. So, we're going to talk about none other than Day After Tomorrow and there we go. You can probably see it. Yeah, you can see it there. And Dragon Wars. Well, what can I say about these movies? Well, the only thing I find pretty obvious about the Day After Tomorrow movie, it's pretty obvious it's like a end of the world apocalypse movie kind of adaptation, versus that many other uh, movies have that which go off of it. But the thing I like about these two movies is that they really are kind of like a disaster movie that really evolves about what's going to happen when the end of the world comes. But I like about okay. What I love about Day After Tomorrow is that it's actually very well kind of the end of the world's subject when you know originally that it doesn't usually have to be like ended originally. Like originally sometimes in certain movies, like in certain end of the world movies, they will be eventually be like, okay, a character that knows that there is something wrong with our surface in the earth. All these basically different shapes and sense, all the stuff is happening to what's going to happen. It's almost kind of like the 2012 movie, the 2012, what I'm talking about. The movie adaptation of the end of the world movie. It's kind of almost like that, but this one's actually far more difficult. This one takes its offers in New York, where there's a big hurricane heading towards New York City, and everyone who's living in that area are perpetually drowned into the earth, the distance of the hurricane of the water surface. So originally, the plot of the basis of I love about in this film is that itself is that the characters are very well driven, because there is one guy named what's his face, can't really pronounce his name, but Dennis, who also did the Parent Trap movie and also did the Rookie, the Walt Disney movie Rookie, which Dennis River is pretty much well considered an actor who wrote numbers from Parent Trap, um, the Walt Disney movie Rookie, if you call that Richard. You also got Jake. You also got Jake Ramson, who also is basically younger. I think he was probably younger version in this movie when he started playing other kinds of certain films in the back in the early 2000s. But I think it's pretty obvious, especially in the movie itself, especially you have great some of the actors, and you have great some suspense, especially because what I love about it is that you can see this picture right here. This is the city of the Statue of Liberty in New York, city being just basically covered in flooding of water. First, in the beginning of the film, you see the bilateral son, who played by Jack, who actually is trying to commit with of knowing that there's going to be a flood, uh, Hurricane Richard coming over towards New York. So everybody has to get out of reach Richard before they all drown. So it's pretty obvious in the film itself. It's pretty it first started Richard in one scene Richard was probably interesting, and I think this is probably why I think people don't necessarily don't pay much attention of watching it, because I have heard some mixed reviews of this movie itself, along with basically with Dragon Wars, but I'll get to that later. Um, is that it's more really just kind of see how the fans' reactions and what would happen if the war was like that originally in the world. And curiously, we don't know originally at any time originally if the war's going to end originally. I mean, it's not truly going to basically happen, but I don't see no purpose of it. But what I love about the movie itself is that it's involved to see these disasters. Like for instance, like there was a tornado. In one scene, there's a tornado scene which was terrorizing L.A., which I thought that was pretty well interesting. And actually, when I was watching that, I was very kind of like um, very surprised of that scene virtually with this. I know it's special effects and everything, but what if virtually if Los Angeles was virtually were terrorized by tornadoes and that should be I mean, like the scene is like all the special effects are pretty well millimetered to me originally, and they're pretty well interesting because you got very well considered of what, and you originally have no concerns at all. So I think that for most people who are basically don't get about the movie, it's just because it's evolved versus just like seeing what if the world would actually end it, how will basically end it, how it basically will be demolished cities and people versus escape are trying to escape from this terrorist, well not from terrorists but also I wouldn't say that version, I wouldn't say terrorist. What can I say? More as a threatened, very well disaster to survive in a very climax and very apocalypse world, because originally in certain states of the base of in when we see what I say in certain areas originally in the entire globe, we see the basis that the globe is basically covered with snow, and that's where you see that originally is in New York in this nice picture, and it's obvious originally in the movie itself is that New York is probably the most invasive. It's a tragedy originally to do because originally Dennis Weidman's character, the bio plays his character as a Jackson's son, younger son's character, and he's trying to rescue his son Richard, but basically not to be dead Richard in New York City. So it's obvious Richard in that movie Richard. It's pretty well interesting. I don't want to give away too spoilers because I want to, give certain, but like I said before, at the end it turns out pretty well, very little tragic, but a little bit more happy go getting movie Richard that really evolves with a good ending Richard, because the ending is very well good Richard, and I have to say Richard what it's worth. I think it's pretty interesting to watch. So if you really are interested to watch a disaster end of the world movie, I recommend Day After Tomorrow. Now, Dragon Wars D Wars, I know this has already been reviewed so many times, and I know a lot of people have mixed reviews of this movie. Let me put this down here. Okay, put this right there. I know a lot of people really necessarily try to occasionally don't like this movie. I personally enjoy it because it was pretty well interesting to see a very well realistic snake kind of creature that looks like a dragon. Because in the beginning, we see this, we get to hear the story of basically the two proper main characters, not just the other character who would basically solve the situation, how to get the girl and everything. Because originally in the plot of basically the beginning, the store manager who owns this antique shop, and he actually tells this young boy a story about two lovebirds who eventually fall in love and then basically being attacked by their own offensive by terrorists. But well, I don't know. But the only thing I find odd is about towards the continuing of the movie is that we see the other characters who are eventually just shoot on in originally towards it, because I think one character I can't really pronounce but I think his name was Richard, who plays some character. Robin Franson, who played Jack, who is a. If you don't know who Robin is, he played so much good movies over the years, and pretty much where I did. But Robin Williams' character Jack, who actually really despise to find a girl who has exactly the same DNA. Well, actually, it's exactly the same ego version with his girl, with this woman that basically the main characters will fall in love. And what I love about it, Richard, is that you can see these snake-like creatures that scope around towards LA, Richard. It's like really kind of interesting to me because I was kind of interesting to really see that, Richard. And there's really not much I can really say about Richard. All in all, Richard, I know, Richard, is that the film itself is pretty well decent, Richard, to watch. A lot of people don't like it because it's a European movie. I personally enjoy it because when I was picking this up, I was just very curious about it. 'Cause, it was just something that I never thought that they actually that European's movie to be released in the U.S. The only thing was basically was released it was in Europe, and the production version itself inside because in the behind the scenes there is one behind the scenes version of it, and I will eventually show you to it. In the behind the scenes making of this movie is that um, the director, I think his name was Hawkins Thompson, if I pronounce his name. I'll probably put that name version on the video version so I can show you the name. But anyway, he's a very well considered director, and he explains about how he was going to release this movie towards Ukraine before he shipped it towards the U.S. So it's kind of wait until afterwards when we get to see the movie in basically in the U.S. and hopefully with Rob eventually. And so it was basically the big risk that he could wait until right before when the movie is about to be available. But yeah, I actually pretty have odd to basically seeing this movie because I have heard of it so much, and finally I got to sit down to watch it, and I probably will watch it again, Rich, hopefully to Rich at the end of this. But I really enjoyed the characters itself, especially in the beginning of the film when we see the main characters who are eventually interested in towards the love each other, and then towards the end, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but at the end, it's actually pretty well. It was a little less boring, which and looked kind of dull, but it was pretty well interesting to actually see what is worth and actually hopefully it was really interesting to basically watch for because most people don't usually never talk about this movie that much. I mean, I know mixed reviews of this movie. Basically, probably some people think it was good, some people think it was bad. I find it pretty interesting to watch because, like I say, I don't think there was really no point about it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to know what's this is actually the digital copy version. This is right before when Blu-ray would start to get enhancements. So if we start off, I'll show you. And so we start off by looking at the front cover. I do like this really nice poster because this was actually the original poster that they actually released this movie. And it's pretty obvious. It's on the back. Yeah, if you look at the top original front corner, this was the first time that DVD was actually released to be a digital copy. So originally this movie came out in 2008. So this is a year-old movie originally. And this is like a year and a half movie originally came out. So we look at the front, and look at the back. Yeah, it shows you how basically you disconnect towards your PS3 to connect your DVD digital copy disc to your PS3, which I think is so stupid, Richard. And we open inside. We have also this artwork, and also we got a brochure for the digital copy, which is inspired in August 11, 2011. Yeah, this is a year old. So yeah, I don't know, Richard, why that is, Richard. I think this is basically just kind of crazy. Then we look at Day After Tomorrow. This is actually the original poster they were originally releasing this movie, and this movie came out in, I can't really properly see this there. I think it was released probably in the same year in 2008, Richard. I'm not sure, Richard, but this is a probably year-old movie. So we look at the base. On the back, it's clear there. I do like this scenery right here, Richard, to see the tornado destruction of the LA. That's something you've never seen, Richard, in any kind of end of the world movie before. I mean, this is something that you've probably seen before originally, but this is probably the first time ever doing that originally. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people who create some great pieces of special effects really capture originally of LA's destruction of the tornadoes originally. I mean, that's something you never thought you originally probably seen. And then we open it up, we got just a nice, good this artwork. I like how it's very shiny, glossy originally. Look at that. Ooh. That's pretty cool. So that is Day After Tomorrow and Dragon Wars review. What can I say about it? Well, I enjoy all these movies. I really enjoy it. This is probably the first ever end of the world movies I ever basically bought originally for myself. But I enjoyed the Day After Tomorrow originally. I especially do like the Dragon Wars versus movie because it is a European movie, but it's pretty obvious, pretty well interesting to watch because, like I said, you don't necessarily sit down and watch a European movie that involves with because the director who did the movie is actually doesn't really proper speak English, but he does eventually comes around speaking a little bit of the English because they do have subtitles. And I will have to say the behind the scenes of this movie, it's actually this amazing. They also had I guess I didn't tell about the features for sure, but on the feature you do get behind the scenes footage of basically of the film itself. You also get art gallery and I think the trailers, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But you do get the basically the behind the scenes look of how he actually created this movie, how he shipped it towards Ukraine and actually in the United States. So pretty obvious. And on basically the Day of Tomorrow features, we have full audio commentary by director and co-writer Ronald Reagan. Yeah, Mr. Ronald Reagan, and producing Mike Gluvis. Full commentary by co-writer Jerry Announcement and director of photography Louis Sandron, editor David Bender, and producer designer Barry Veterans. And then audio entertainment, the actual sound dub, deleted scenes, DVD-ROM include over hours of inputs of the making of the footage. Yeah, I haven't really necessarily sat down and watched the extras. I was just too busy watching the movie itself. But I will say for the it doesn't show you originally. If you're very interested in watching end of the war movies, I recommend watching Dragon Wars and Day After Tomorrow because they're very well interesting, entertaining movies, and that's pretty much all I can say about that. Well, that pretty much ends this meeting for you now. I will say to mention this actually is directed by the same director who did Independence Day, so just bear in mind that's going to be pretty obvious if you listen to the commentary. Yeah, it's really interesting. I should mention in the version that the director in this movie itself is actually probably have a commentary as well. Version. I haven't really paid much attention of the features as I was just too busy watching these two movies simultaneously, and I think it's pretty obvious that it's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about it. All I can say is both movies are great. They're very well entertaining, and yeah, definitely worth listening to checking them out. Alrighty, so that is it for me for now. Next time I'll probably do more reviews or probably something else. You just have to wait and see. Alright, so then, thank you for watching. Sarah Brown. And sayonara. Okay, what can we review this time? Let me show you again. Well, let's pick up. Let's basically start off with originally Enter the Worlds. No, that's not what I want to say. Okay, let's try that again. Well, let's basically talk about these two. Today, I am pressing to new reviews. I guess I got right. Let me try that. Let's try that one last time. Take 3, I guess. I guess I should probably start out first with just taking some of my take. Well, let's basically talk about another day. Take 4. Well, let's start with these two. Day After Tomorrow and Dragon Wars. D-Wars. As you call that. Okay. Let's try. Take number 5. I guess I should probably. Let me try that again. Take number 2. Okay. So that's it for many of you for now. I don't know what I can say about these movies. All I can say is just a joyful way to watch and probably be interesting if the world was ended, like something like this. Which I do like the fact, that they actually have, the tornadoes, in LA, which is great. But that's all I can say about that. So that really ends the menu for now. Next up, we'll probably do more reviews, probably more updates. Because I did eventually pick up some pretty good Blu-rays and pretty well good series of DVDs for you guys. And I probably will show you what I got. So that ends the menu for now. Until next time, this is Ed Brown. Thank you for watching. And sayonara. Okay, I think that looks fine. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, no fancy DVD, Blu-ray updates. I thought maybe we could go back to do more, more reviews of movies that which I just wanted to talk about. So, without further ado, let's go head to the DVD shelves and see what we could basically pick it up for what we could review. So, I'll see you there. Well, welcome to my DVD collection and along with my half Blu-ray collection. So let's pick out what we're gonna review this time around. What can we review this time around? How about Day After Tomorrow? And Dragon Wars, D-Wars. Let's face talk about Day After Tomorrow and Dragon Wars, D-Wars. Today, I am Prince Multimedia Reviews. I think it's pretty obvious, especially in the movie itself, especially you have great some of the actors, and you have very great suspense, especially because what I love about it is that you can see this picture right here. This is the city of the Statue of Liberty in New York, city being just basically covered in flooding of water. First, in the beginning of the film, you see the bilateral son, who played by Jack, who actually is trying to commit with knowing that there's going to be a flood, uh, uh, hurricane Richard coming over towards New York. So everybody has to get out of reach Richard before they all drown. So it's pretty obvious in the film itself. It's pretty it first started Richard in one scene Richard was pretty interesting, and I think this is probably why I think people don't necessarily don't pay much attention of watching it, because I haven't heard some mixed reviews of this movie itself, along with basically Dragon Wars, but I'll get to that later. Is that it's more really just kind of see how the fans' reaction to what would happen if the war was like that originally in the world. And curiously, we don't know originally at any time if the war's going to end originally. I mean, it's not truly going to basically happen, but I don't see no purpose of it. But what I love about the movie itself is that, it's involved to see these disasters. For instance, like there was a tornado. In one scene, there's a tornado. Say a character that knows that there is something wrong with our surface in the earth. All these basically different shapes and since all the stuff is happening to what's going to happen. It's almost kind of like the 2012 movie. The 2012, you know what I'm talking about. The movie adaptation of the End of the World movie. it's kind of almost like that, but this one's actually far more difficult. This one takes its offers in New York, where there's a big hurricane heading towards New York City, and everyone who's living in that area are permanently drowned into the earth the distance of the hurricane of the water surface. So originally, the plot of the basis of I love about in this film is that itself is that the characters are very well driven, because there is one guy named what's his face, can't really pronounce his name, but Dennis, I mean, who also did the Parent Trap movie, and also did the Rookie, the Walt Disney movie Rookie, which Dennis River is pretty much well considered an actor who role numbers from Parent Trap, um, the Walt Disney movie Rookie, if you call that Richard. You also got Jake. You also got Jake Ramson, who also is basically younger. I think he was probably younger version in this movie when he started playing other kind of certain films in the back in the early 2000s. But welcome back. So we're gonna talk about none other than Day After Tomorrow, and there we go. You can probably see it. Yeah, you can see it. There we go. And Dragon Wars. Well, what can I say about these movies? Well, the only thing I find pretty obvious about the Day After Tomorrow movie, it's pretty obvious it's like a end of the world apocalypse movie kind of adaptation versus that many other uh, um, movies have that which go off the original. But the thing I like about these two movies is that they really are kind of like a, uh, a a disaster movie that really evolves about what's going to happen when the end of the world comes. But I like about okay. What I love about Day After Tomorrow is that it's actually a very well kind of the end of the world subject when you know originally that it doesn't usually have to be like ended originally. Like originally sometimes in certain movies, like in certain end of the world movies, they will be eventually be like scene Richard in was basically was terrorizing L.A., which I thought that was pretty well interesting. And actually, when I was watching that, I was very kind of like um, very surprised at that scene virtually with this. I know it's special effects and everything, but what if virtually if Los Angeles was virtually were terrorized by tornadoes and that should be I mean, like the scene is like all the special effects are pretty well minimum version to me version, and they're pretty well interesting because you got very well considered of of what and you originally have no concerns at all. So I think that for most people who are basically don't get about the movie is just because it's evolved versus just like seeing what if the world would actually end it, how it basically end, how it basically will be demolished cities and people versus escape are trying to escape from this terrorist, well not from terrorists but also I wouldn't say that version, I wouldn't say terrorist. What can I say? More as a threatened, very well disaster to survive in a very climax and very apocalypse world, because originally in certain states of the base of in, when we see what I say in certain areas originally in the entire globe, we see the basis that the globe is basically covered with snow, and that's where you see that originally is in New York in the